Welcome to the Principles of Performance podcast, where we discuss how to optimize your health, fitness, and performance. Drawing on decades of experience of working as coaches, consultants, and trainers to top performers, athletes, and teens from professional sports to top universities to the U.S. military, Eric DeGatti and Mike Perry discuss topics and strategies of how to perform at your highest level and be your very best. Join us and our friends and colleagues who are leaders in the fitness and performance industry as we investigate and challenge the most popular training, nutrition, lifestyle, and recovery protocols. Hey everyone, real quick before we get the show started, I want to share with you something that we're really excited about. Mike and I launched Principles of Program Design just about 2 years ago. And since then, we've been working really hard on building more and more content. And we're finally ready to release some of that great new stuff. We're having a updated version of our original online foundations course where we've added 3 new bonus chapters. We've also updated our live course, and we're going to be doing that in April at Skill of Strength in Massachusetts. We also have 3 brand new online courses, including our exercise coach course, where we teach you our belt system of how we progress and regress and coach exercises, as well as group mastery, where Mike shares his systems for how he implements his successful group fitness training programs up at Skill of Strength, as well as something called Primed, where we teach you about programming warm-ups. And then in addition to that, we're also launching a virtual mentorship where we're going to work hands-on with a select handful of coaches and trainers, working with you every week on how to develop the best systems and programs to build a successful career. And then in addition to that, we're putting together a free ebook as well as a supporting webinar where we're going to give you our top 10 tips to a successful career in the fitness industry. We're going to share with you our secrets and our systems that we use that have helped us open up our facilities, as well as speak around the world and work with some of the best athletes out there. And so to get more information on all of this, go to principleswebinar.com and you can find out about all the new and exciting stuff. Now, let's get ready to get started with the show. And away we go. Here we are with the Principles of Performance podcast. I am your host, Eric DeGatti, along with my friend and co-host, Mike Perry. And we are at episode number 63, Mr. Perry.
63? Holy cow, that's a lot. Wow, that many. But we've got a doozy for today. This is a good buddy of mine. And I've known Mike for quite some time. And I'm excited because Mike's going to share a ton of information on how he's being successful in the industry, but he's doing it a little bit of a different way. So we are excited to have Mike here, but I'm going to let you finish up with his official bio because it sounds way cooler than me just making stuff up.
Yeah, and plus, if I let you two go, it's 2 old boys from Boston. You're going to just talk about Sam Adams and Noma and Tommy, and it'll be nothing but just nonsense.
He hates Tom. He doesn't like Tom Brady, dude. This is a whole different discussion.
So actually, I like Tom Brady now. I hate Bill Belichick, but we can.
Okay, fair enough. Okay,
fair enough. We'll circle back, Mike. All right. So our guest today is Michael Campanella. He was a all New England sprinter in high school and college, and then when Mike gets to college, he realizes his team strength and conditioning program isn't what he hoped it would be, and so he and his co-captain basically rewrite the program while he's at Trinity, and so. At the time, he's studying to go to law school, and then he's getting ready to take his LSATs. So he gets into the fitness thing because of rewriting this program, and gets a part-time job at Train Boston. And as fate would have it, so does a young Mike Perry work there as well. Exactly. Can't even imagine. And that's where he met Mike, and he just kind of fell in love with the fitness business. And much to his parents' dismay, every parent's dream, Mike, is that their kids come to him and say, "Listen, I'm getting into personal training," because right away you're thinking, oh, we're set. We're good for life. Right. Mm-hmm. So he takes it as a full-time career. And so some other parallels with Mr. Perry. He also was big in the MMA world. Mike competed and fought 19 times in 4 years, but kind of got burnt out on that. And so kind of shifted gears and started focusing on working with general population. and really focusing even more so on the business side of fitness and trying to grow a model that he's been working on and led to where he is now. And it's a facility that rents space to private businesses so they can make more money than anywhere else in the industry. And it's kind of a unique model. And that's why I want to talk to him more about it. So, Mike, I'm glad you're on the show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. So let's dive in, right? You talk about, you kind of have this combined experience as a kind of this underpaid W-2 worker, and then you're also the 1099 contractor who kind of had to run your own business. And then that kind of led to your current business model, which you created. Talk a little bit about that and kind of what that model looks like.
Yeah, so the evolution was pretty it was bumpy to say the least. So I started, as you mentioned, at Train Boston with Mike, and I was there for 6 months, and a couple of crazy things happened, and everybody left. And Mike went off to start his own facility, which has been phenomenal. And then I went off with a separate group and started our facility. And I was with this group for 10 years, as you alluded to, as a W-2 employee. And I worked 60 to 65 hours a week. It was a really nice facility, but I was doing the typical kind of 50, 60% goes back to the house, working my tail off. I'm spending extra hours there cleaning, organizing, etc. And I think the most money I ever made there was about $98,000 for the year. And that kind of stung, especially considering the guy who ran the place kind of subscribed to the work the least, make the most. So it was really hard. It was a hard environment to sort of get motivated by, and it created a lot of resentment. So long story short, 10 years there, went a different path. I ended up renting space as a 1099 contractor for 2.5 years. And the first year under this model, only given 20% back to the house, I made $100,000 more in income. And I was just blown away by it. But so the drawback to that model that I've seen historically and in my own personal experience is most of the time when someone sort of builds a space to rent out to non-employees, the space itself leaves a lot to be desired. So the facility wasn't that great. The people were awesome, but the facility was old. It wasn't kept up, and because it was a pay-as-you-go model, the trainers were not consistent. So you'd be in there with your clients, and you'd be in there with the coaches you see all the time, and randomly some new coach would walk in with a client. You would be like, who's that person? You have no idea who they are. Kind of messes up the flow. They don't know where the equipment goes. Next thing you know, you're helping them out during their session, trying to coach your client. So it took away from the community feel. And I just remember thinking to myself during that whole process, I wonder if there's a way that I can combine the revenue model from the contractor side of things and the really nice facility and the commitment to keeping the facility nice from the kind of W-2 employee side of things, and just putting those two together to make the perfect model for the coach. And that's what I've been trying to do with Pex Health and Fitness.
So Mike, one of the things that Eric and I talk about a lot of the times when we do some of our webinars and a lot of our other talks is like the personal training career. It's like, I mean, we've seen so many people come and go. Like average is what, between 6 and 24 months. What do you think is the difference between, the trainers that make it and the trainers that don't? But what do you think was the difference for you? Because I feel like that's something as well that is going to be super important.
Yeah. So I have to go back to what Eric said in my bio in the intro. I went to Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, really good NESCAC school. I was studying to go to law school. That was kind of the dream. And I will never forget going to my parents and telling them that I was going to go as a personal trainer, and just watching the tears stream down my mom's face. And it broke my heart. But I think for me anyways, I genuinely love my job, and I genuinely love the industry, and I have a real passion for A, health and fitness, but B, helping individuals on a personal level. I say to the coaches who work at my facilities all the time, I'm like, on our worst days, we've helped 10 people feel better. You get into a rut. Sometimes it feels like Groundhog Day. You can get bored and it can get stale, but at the end of the day, every single day, unless you drop a dumbbell on somebody's head, which happens, but luckily not to me, you're always making somebody feel better when they left than when they came. And I find real value in that. And I think that's what separates the long-term trainers from the transient trainers. So the coaches who are in it for 5, 10, 15 years are the coaches, I think, who really buy into the industry itself, and they love helping people versus, the coaches you see who come in 6 months, a year, 2 years. A lot of them are doing it as a side hustle, or fitness is like a hobby to them. They really like working out, so they want to get paid to help other people work out, but they don't really know why they're doing it outside of that. That's kind of the biggest separator I've seen in terms of the long term versus the short term.
So that latter trainer you're talking about, we talk about in our webinar how they get sucked in by trainer math, right? They start seeing, okay, well, I like fitness and I could charge 75, I could charge $90 an hour. And if I work 40 hours a week and I multiply that times that much per hour, and then I multiply that times 52 weeks a year, wow, I'm going to make 150 grand just teaching people how to exercise. But we explain it doesn't work out that way often. So
No.
explain why that falls way short of expectations and how that's usually a huge pitfall that early trainers fall into.
Yeah, I mean, if you're motivated by just revenue, you're not in the right industry, I think. Just from like a calendar standpoint, clients go on vacation. Clients who can afford personal training and have that disposable income, they have houses in other locations. They go on long vacations. Clients get sick. Clients get injured. So you could have 1 week, you could have 30 to 35 sessions, and then the next week you have 15. And then in the summer you have 10, but in the spring you've got 40. So always chasing that dollar can be risky, and it also puts a lot of pressure, I think, on the coach to look at it in such a small scale, kind of not seeing the forest through the trees, and not realizing that it's going to take you 1 to 3 years to really build up a book that's going to be consistent, and it's going to be able to keep you safe when clients go on vacation and they go on, or they get sick or get injured. I always tell these guys to try to have more clients than they have hours, and build up a queue of other clients so that you can fill in those spots at certain times. But again, I think chasing the dollar and trying to do that trainer math, it's not rational. It doesn't work out in the long run, and it just puts too much pressure on you.
Now, the other problem with that is on the flip side, is that mentality on the client side will get you in trouble too. Because if they see it as, oh, I'm paying $75 for this hour. Oh, well, you went to the bathroom. Well, that's a minute. Like, do I get $1 off? Like, you went and blew your nose. You know what I mean? Like, it's this mentality that I'm training my time, which you really are, but you really are training my expertise. So if I get you there in 40 minutes instead of the 45 minutes that are allotted, like, that shouldn't matter. But that's a really tough thing to sell, because it's always been this X per hour type of mentality, right?
Yeah, and that's a very important distinction too. Selling your expertise versus selling minutes. And it also takes you a while to get there as a coach, to convince your clients that you are selling expertise and not minutes. So when you do get to that 10:24, but the session ends at 10:30, and you give the old knuckles, and the client's like, wait a minute, we have 6 minutes left. When you've done it long enough, they know that they're done, and they know that it's time to cool down, versus, to your point, selling the 60-minute start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, if right now you call an electrician, a plumber, or whoever to your house, and it's X amount for the call, if they get it done in 2 minutes, they win, right? You're paying for their expertise, because I don't know how to do that. Just no different than you don't know how to get yourself from point A to point B. That's why you're hiring me. So I think positioning ourselves as that, I don't go to my accountant and say, it only took you 4 hours to do my return, you should get a little bit less. We sometimes don't put ourselves on that same professional plane.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, no, it's there's so many different business models, and that's one of the things that I think people don't understand, is that while there are several different business models, and I would argue, Mike, that you're kind of combining, one or two, but each business model has a pro and has a con. And I think one of the things that people don't realize about, sort of the traditional models, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, is again, we've had these traditional models, and it's been proven to work, but only for a certain period of time. And I think a lot of the times people assume, like, I mean, how many times have we heard personal training is dead? right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
how
Yeah.
many times have we heard that, like, oh, every business guru that has a business page that they're going to sell you said personal training's dead, and it's just like, okay, cool. I know a lot of people that make a lot of money on personal training, but I think a lot of the times they I think they forget about the context, and maybe the math says that personal training is done, but that's the whole point of being personal, and personal training is right, it's not just about X's and O's and sets and reps, it's about the relationship and what you can offer to them. And in some ways we're definitely more than just counting reps. But let me ask you this, like, let's talk about like one-on-one personal training, right? That's what you guys do. Like, why is that beneficial to do something like that versus a smaller group setting or a large group setting? This is, obviously we know, but this is more for our listeners here.
Yep. So I mean, so for me, the one-on-one model, and we do a mix at all of our facilities. My facility that I'm primarily at is a little bit bigger than the other two. So we have the square footage capabilities of doing more semi-private and small group training. I personally am probably at like a 50-50 mix, but I started in the one-to-one. And basically, for me, when I got quote unquote too busy and I couldn't add more hours, I just started grouping people together. So it sort of transitioned into a semi-private. I personally have transitioned away from the bigger group training. But going back to your original question on the one-to-one, it was easier for me getting started just to get the reps in a one-to-one setting. It was easier for me to work on the relationship skills and building the personal trust between one person versus 2, 3, 4 people at a time. It was easier for me to cue and watch technique and watch form. And it was just easier to get clients, getting 1, 2, 3 versus, groups of 4. And getting people to kind of buy in and trust me. But like I said, sort of as I've evolved, A, from a revenue standpoint, B, from an accessibility standpoint, kind of going more towards a semi-private has made sense. But I think for me personally, in my experience, starting in the one-to-one setting was it was more beneficial to get going and get comfortable and confident and get the reps in.
So, all right, this is where I feel like we're going to get practical, because every business coach in the world says, start off with personal training, and once you get busy, just do, charge a third and then you can make double. And it's the easiest thing in the world, right?
Yeah.
It never, ever works like that. Especially if you're trying to start off like with small group training. So Mike, can you like, I want to give some people a little dose of reality here, like of what it takes to, sort of build something, but like, telling someone, well, yeah, why would you charge 100 when you could charge each person 50 and make 200? It's easy. What are the realities of that? Because I don't think people understand. The math makes sense, but in real life, that is one of the hardest things to do ever.
Yeah. I mean, so I've been doing this for 15 years. I could do training sessions at this point with my eyes closed for the most part. And I still have semi-private small group sessions where like one guy comes in with a wooden leg, one guy comes in with an eye patch on, one guy comes in with a fake arm, and they're like, we want to work on core. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, you can't even see where I am in the room. Like, how am I going to adapt and do this on the fly, right? So then if I'm a new coach and I'm starting off with just semi-private or small group training, and I don't have the reps, I don't have the confidence, I don't have the experience, and I'm bringing in these groups of people who all have different fitness levels, experience levels, injury histories, contraindications, you name it. I think it's a lot harder to get going that way, and to feel confident and comfortable about your skills versus that one-on-one setting, in my opinion. And yeah, you're going to make less in the short term, but you're going to make less in the short term anyways. When you get started out as a trainer, you need to understand that you're not going to make a lot of money for a long time. And you've got to put in a lot of work and figure out your systems and figure out your skill set and your personality. And then it'll all come together to the point where it kind of runs itself. But in the beginning, I think A, it's going to be tough, but B, make it as easy as possible. And I think it's that one-on-one setting to start.
It's just speaking of being an entrepreneur, there's a great line Alex Hermosi has where he talks about, you know, you don't want to be stuck in a 40-hour job. So you go be an entrepreneur and go work 80. Um, but so let's keep going on this semi-private model. And so for the people that are kind of unaware, that what you're talking about is where you're dividing your time, you're dividing your attention, where people are sharing their time and they're sharing your attention at a lesser rate, but they're still getting an individualized program, right? It's not where you've shifted gears yet into group, which we will in a minute, where everybody's doing the same thing. There's a wad on the board type of deal. This is where everybody's still getting an individualized program, but that takes a lot of hustle, like you're talking about. Like you have to be able to manage. I may have 4 different people doing 4 different things at the same time, and I have to split myself in 4. Like, not only is that you need to really be sharp, but it's not easy. It's exhausting to be able to have your energy that you used to pour into one person now spread out amongst 3 or 4.
We lose your mic? Are we frozen up here for a second?
I think we lost him for a second.
You do have to put a lot.
All right, hold on, Mike. Mike, you there?
Clients too.
Hold on, Mike. All right, so yeah, now you're good. So just start up fresh after, and I'll edit it out. Just start up fresh after where I left off with semi-private training.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, one thing too is like you in the semi-private model, you have to put a lot of trust in your clients because they need to remember what they did last week. They need to remember what you just demonstrated to them. They need to remember their sets and reps and weights. They need to be keeping track on their phones or on their apps or their sheets or whatever they're doing. And from my own personal experience, that is difficult to get clients to buy into that, especially if they are used to that one-on-one experience or they're used to that eyes-on approach where you'll get your typical like, what weight did I do here last week? And I'm like, I've seen 700 people since you. Like I don't know, maybe 30 pounds. Like, but I thought you were keeping track of it. But we'll figure it out. And again, like just in that semi-private setting, it's just hard to be able to spend an equal amount of time on each individual and making sure that they're doing the exercises correctly and they're not reinforcing bad movement patterns. Yeah, it's definitely tricky for sure. But to your point, if you can figure it out when you get those systems going, I think from a revenue standpoint, the semi-private model, it can be very lucrative.
And it can be successful. I don't want to think people think that we're discouraging it. I mean, Alan Cosgrove and Rachel out at Results Fitness in California were kind of the pioneers on this many, many years ago. And it also, what it helped do is it helped reframe that concept of you have to do one-on-one. And Alan had a great, perspective on it because he was coming out of cancer treatment. And he said, look, I go in a room and I'm getting chemotherapy with 10 other people. Like they're injecting lethal shit into my body. I think I could give you a glute bridge with 2 other people in your group and not kill you. Right. So that perspective of that everybody's perceptions, you need this one-on-one training to get the attention. That's not necessarily true either.
Yeah. And I'm a huge fan of the hybrid model where you have, like I tell my clients, I'm like, 1 day a week, you should see me in a one-on-one setting, and we can go over the questions and the movements that you've had difficulties with in your semi-private and or groups. But then the other 2, 3, 4 days, look for that semi-private or look for that group where you can kind of get lost in the shuffle. There's not so much risk. There's not so much attention. You can kind of get caught up in the camaraderie and the energy and kind of kick your own ass in that group setting. And then come back to me for that one-on-one where we can clean up some movement patterns so you're not getting injured in the group setting. I personally, I think it's more kind of cost effective to the client. I think it mixes it up and it keeps it fresh and motivating for both parties involved.
So, what about like larger group training, Mike? Have you what has your experience been with working with a little bit larger groups? Do you feel like that can be a productive business model as well?
So that's actually how I cut my teeth in the industry. I was doing large groups at Train Boston when I first started. I was doing like the 6 a.m., 9 a.m., and 6 p.m. That was my original schedule. And I loved it. I mean, again, it was tough. I remember shadowing you. I remember shadowing BJ Baker, another buddy and mentor in the industry. So I felt confident enough going into those situations, going into the groups. I think it's funny, the semi-private to me is almost more stressful than the big group, because there's like an expectation in the big group. If you're a client, you're like, yeah, it's a big group. Like I might not know what I'm doing. I'll just watch somebody else and we'll figure it out. So as a coach, like you obviously are doing a great job queuing, and you're doing your best to make sure everybody's on the same page with, but you know that some people are going to get lost in the shuffle. But in terms of the business side of things, I think there's a place for it. For me and our company, we never really have had the space until recently to have a really thriving large group program. Until recently, we opened up our third location in Needham Heights, and our head guy over there, Derek Durkin, is running a big boot camp program called Train Full Send, and he is doing a fantastic job with it. That's where he came from. He came from that big boot camp group setting. Whereas the guy who runs our facility in Medfield, Marius, it's a smaller space, so they don't do a ton of group training and semi-private. It's mostly one-on-one. So for me, in terms of the business model, it's been almost sort of predicated on the size of the facility. So we haven't had a ton of experience with it, but I do think it definitely has its place in, business models and facilities around, for sure.
Now, Mike, this is obviously your wheelhouse, because skill of strength is probably about as good as anybody in the world at this large group fitness thing. But I think an important part to distinguish for trainers that are listening is that the crossover usually when you get to group out of personal training or semi-private models is you're not so much providing a program anymore as you're providing workouts. And that's a big difference, right? Yeah. And then we always talk about like, okay, if you're just going to provide workouts, well, guess what? I can get workouts for free on YouTube, on Instagram. I can go, or even if I am going to go pay somebody, you have F45, you have Orange Theory, you have CrossFit, you have all these other things that have way bigger brand recognition, way bigger advertising dollars. They can lose a lot more upfront than you can as a personal business owner. So how are you going to compete with them if you're just giving workouts? It's your workout versus their workout. There's really not anything that's going to keep people coming to you other than, oh, you're the flavor of the month, and then they're going to be gone in a month, because we've seen a lot of those come and go. So how do you stand out as a group program? And I'll put this out to you as well, Perry. How do you stand out as a group program if you don't have that brand name recognition and you're going up against all these major corporate conglomerates?
One of the things Mike said early on is he's a helper, right? And, and I think that if you start with why, and we talk about this in our course, as talking about starting with why when you're working towards developing a business, because if your why is just simply to make a lot of money, then get out of fitness and go someplace else, because I don't want you here anyways. But a big part of it is simply starting with making sure that your goal is to help a lot of people, and I think that's honestly where it starts. And I think also you have to be creative, and you have to be willing to just be tired for a really long time and work a lot and not sleep as much. And Mike is one of the hardest workers I've ever met, and I'm a pretty damn hard worker. Yeah. But Mike's one of those few guys that I'm like, this guy's a maniac because he doesn't stop. But that's also the reason why he's successful. And if there's one thing I can sort of just say, a big part of it is just, sometimes you just got to outwork people, because that might be the only option you have. Like when we were put our business together and we had the pandemic, it's not like, oh, there's a pandemic, let me refer to the pandemic protocol that we wrote in our business plan. It just doesn't happen that way. So I think a big part of it is just, having some decent business sense, but really caring and willing to just get creative and do a lot of things that people don't want to do. Like, if you think you're above cleaning the bathroom or going in the dumpster, get into another business, man, because it's just, that's the way it is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Mike is the other hardest worker I've ever met. So right back at you, buddy. And I would say too, I would add on to that with the big group training model and providing workouts versus training programs. It's kind of like the definition of athleticism, where it's like you can't really describe it, but you know it when you see it. I would say the same thing is true for big group training programs. You really can't describe it, but shit programming when you see it. You just know when you're in a setting and you're at a boot camp and you're like, man, that workout just wasn't awesome. Like I might have tweaked my rotator cuff and I probably burned 2,000 calories because I did 10 minutes of jumping jacks and burpees, but just really wasn't a well thought out program or a well thought out workout. Whereas a facility like Mike's, their group training program, you know, when you're going there for your workout, the workout is awesome, and it could be a standalone training program somewhere else if you wanted to group some of them together. So you just know it when you see it, I think.
Hey, everybody, a quick break in the action here. Hope you're enjoying the show, and we appreciate you listening. We're working hard to bring you the highest quality content and best guests every single week. So if you could do us a big favor and go and like and subscribe to the show on whatever platform you get your podcasts on, it would be greatly appreciated. Be sure to listen at the end of the show also to find out where you can find out more information about our courses, as well as a special discount code for all our listeners. Thanks again, and let's get back to the show. Circling back a little bit, like one of the things that's lacking is a career path, right? And one of the things that you talk about at PEX is kind of giving trainers that window to a career path, that this isn't a side hustle, that this isn't something, this is something you can actually make a career out of. So talk about where that career path, and you're giving them a little bit of a unique career path, because Mike and I talk about there's usually one of three destinations that everybody wants. They want to open up their own facility because they think it's glamorous, until they realize that they do have to fix the toilet and mop and go in at 2 a.m. when the alarm goes off and all that stuff that we've all gone through as a facility owner. Or they want to, hey, I want to train big name clients because it looks cool to stand next to this athlete or this person on Instagram. Or the third thing is they want to go out and they want to be an industry leader. They want to go out and teach workshops or be on the, on the stage at Perform Better, one of those things. But you're giving them a different, unique way that they can actually have a career. So talk about like the nitty gritty of and nuts and bolts of how that looks at PEX.
Yeah, so that's kind of become my passion. Has been the business side of thing and the coach side of things. So one of our kind of taglines at our facility is we put the coaches first. And I joke with everybody that if somebody came to me 5 years ago and said, do you want to be the CEO of PEX or do you want to be a coach at PEX? It would have been a really hard decision for me to make because of the revenue potential that the coaches have in our company, but also the growth potential. And this is like an often overlooked aspect of the personal training business. And you guys have mentioned it kind of very at the beginning. If you're just chasing the dollar, you're going to burn out and you're going to fail. You need to know what you're going to do 10, 15, 20 years from now. When you finally get to that 40 sessions a week and you're just like killing yourself, but you're really starting to make some good money, then what? And you offer the 3 points. My point to the coaches who come into our facilities is you don't have to take out $500,000 in debt to open up your own facility. We will put the capital up to open up the next facility and you will manage it. And then you'll have an equity buy-in path to develop some actual equity in the company and some real ownership in the company. Or you could stay where you are and you could hire a coach to work underneath you, or you could get to this certain level of training and you're now in our profit sharing program. So we're always trying to figure out ways. We're trying to enforce to these coaches that they really are business owners. We're just trying to take all the hard stuff out of it. So they're not in the gym at 4 a.m. fixing clogged shower drains. Unfortunately, that's still me. Hopefully we'll get to a point soon where we fix that. But I'm trying to take all the burden of actual like brick and mortar ownership out of it, but still giving them the tools and the growth potential that they need to stay in this industry for a long time and feel like that they are actual business owners and they can keep growing without hitting that kind of 40-hour-a-week ceiling.
Now, just to point out how rare this is in the industry, I'll throw myself on the fire for this one. Is that when people said, oh, you opened up your own facility, I had my own facility here in Jersey for 12 years. It's not because I had these great aspirations of being a facility owner and having my name on a building. I didn't even name it after myself. Is that there was no place that I wanted to work at. And so I just built it myself. But I was by no means equipped to be the business owner. And I just wanted to be really, really good at developing programs and doing what I did. And so I begrudgingly was the owner. Right. And that becomes a tough situation. And a lot of us who are put into this situation is by default, not by design. And so to have someone who actually appreciates the business side is a very unique thing. And if you have that opportunity to get involved with that as a young trainer or even as an established trainer, that is something you run towards. Because I'll even tell you myself, I was a lousy owner I was just really, really good as a coach and a leader, that I was able to make a successful facility that probably could have been a lot more successful from a business perspective had I been more of a business owner. Mike, you're on mute. Perry, you're on mute.
Yeah, I can't hear you either.
We good now?
Yep.
Oh, good. Pick it up from there. We'll edit it.
See, where were we? I totally lost my train of thought after that.
I
Of
was just
course I
talking
did.
about being the shitty business owner.
Oh, no, no, no. Yeah, no, no. Yeah. All right. So, when it comes to, running a business, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they have, well, 9 times out of 10, it's a personal trainer that's a good trainer and they're full. So they automatically assume that they can transition to being a business owner. And I think that's one of the biggest issues we see. And that's what we see, I would say, the majority of the time, because they're like, I'm a good trainer. I work for someone else. I'm busy. Why would I pay them? Why could I just do it on my own? And then they realize really, really quickly, oh, it doesn't really, really work that way. And I think people, they don't understand how much business knowledge you actually need to run a successful gym. They just assume, well, if I'm a personal trainer and I can do like 10 packs, 20 packs, 30 packs, and maybe run groups with like a year and a month-to-month session, it's my business and it's good. We just sell them. It's like, it doesn't work like that. It really, that's what people think. And how important is it to have multiple skills under the roof of the business? Because I know for me, I'm the creative guy. I'm the guy that does the programs. I can read all the research and put together these crazy programs and lead speak. But if you ask me to put together a spreadsheet or even write my name, forget about it. That's my wife's job. So, like, how important is it to have the business part nailed down, Mike?
Well, so I always go back to an Eric Cressy quote about being a coach. And I believe he said something to the effect of, a lot of people can be a good trainer, but not a lot of people can be great trainers. So there's a lot of room to separate yourself from the good trainers. And I would say the same thing about the gym business. It's not too difficult to open up a decent gym that can pay the bills and stay open. It's very difficult to own and operate an excellent facility. And I think it leaves a lot of room to separate yourself from the others. But to your question, so that part of the reason why I work so much and I've had to work so much is because there are so many things that are involved with running a personal training or a strength conditioning facility, on top of your own programming for your clients, and you're training your clients and cleaning up after them and doing all the stuff that you would do as just a personal trainer, which might take 40, 50 hours a week. Then you've got to do the 15 to 20 hours of admin work, bookkeeping, taxes, bill pay, you name it. And if you don't know that going into it, it's extremely difficult to play catch up after you've kind of gotten into the throes of things. And for me, luckily, knock on wood, I've been able to be healthy enough where I can get up at 3:30 in the morning every day and do the 1 to 1.5 hours of admin work, office work, bookkeeping and accounting that needs to be done for the gym to run successfully, then go train my clients, then do the emails and the workouts and such. About a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, I hired a part-time GM, Bianca, who has been a lifesaver. So I've been able to offload a lot of stuff to her, but as you guys could probably attest to, it's just given me more free time to do other stuff. So now I'm doing more work that I couldn't get to before. But I think, to your point, if you have the idea that you can just be a busy trainer and then go and open up your own gym and somehow all the other stuff takes care of itself, you just do your training and selling your packages and pay the bills. It's not how it works at all. And that's why when I talk to coaches, I've never tried to dissuade a coach. We've lost 2 coaches here in the 5 years we've been open, and they've opened up their own facilities. And I've never tried to dissuade a coach from doing that, especially if that's their dream. I've just always tried to be real, transparent, and upfront with them. that it is extremely difficult. And I've shared my books with them. They see revenue and expenses and bills and utilities and pandemic stuff, like things that and things you would never even think of that you are in charge of and have to be in control of if you are the head person. When like you guys were talking about earlier, when you get the phone call that the water pipe has burst and you're running into the gym at 3 o'clock in the morning, like that's on you. And then you have to regroup and rebound and then go do 12 hours of training. And then your kid comes home sick with Ebola and you're like trying to figure out how you can, not get whatever preschool disease they have so you can still go into work. I mean, the whole thing, it's very tricky and it's tough. And, just you have to be realistic about the demands and the hours. And, you've got to be able to get to the point where you can pay people to delegate and take stuff off of your shoulders, but it's really hard.
So let's keep going with false expectations and circle back to, where you started. And you started off as a college athlete. And at that point, when you're rewriting your team's program, do you have aspirations that, hey, maybe I want to be a team strength coach at some point?
Not really, to be honest. I never thought about that. I think for me, and this kind of goes back to, so my track and field career, so to speak, was cut short. I had a ton of injuries, orthopedic injuries, hamstrings, you name it. So I ended up getting into mixed martial arts, later in life. And I fell in love with it. I started doing jiu-jitsu competitions. I won the Golden Gloves. I was doing cage fighting, all that kind of stuff. But I sort of burnt out on that. And for me, if I'm not like personally involved in the sport or the team, then it's hard for me to get involved conceptually and or objectively. So like once I stopped doing jujitsu and mixed martial arts and boxing, I didn't really want to train those athletes anymore because I wasn't in it and I couldn't be involved in the discussions because I just didn't really care anymore. And I don't know, I kind of go back and forth with that. But even with doing the strength conditioning for team sports, like once I stopped sprinting, I didn't really want to be involved in sprinting anymore. And a lot of it too is like, it's not regret, but it's sort of, I get sad thinking about not being able to compete at the level I used to compete at and not being able to overcome the injuries I had. And so I try to I make clean breaks from that stuff. So really long answer to your question is I never really thought about getting into the team coaching aspect.
Because that's another career pathway that I think a lot of people get their hopes up for, especially young trainers. I remember being specifically in college, we had a course, it was careers in exercise science, and all the athletic training majors were like, yeah, I want to be a trainer for the Knicks. I want to be a trainer for the Giants. And like, no, you're not. You're going to be taping ankles for the local JV girls volleyball team for probably $18,000 a year. And so like that false expectation that I'm going to go make six figures and I'm going to get to have the cool gear and polo shirt on the sideline and travel with the team, like those jobs are so difficult to get. And to get to those points, the people who did get there had to eat so much shit to get there and had to give up so much and travel around the country and get fired and do really lousy internships. And like those are things that people just assume that I'm going to get my personal training certificate and all of a sudden the biggest named athletes in the world are going to come train with me. I'm going to post it on Instagram. Like that doesn't happen either.
Yeah. And also, sorry.
Yeah, no. And Perry, you can chime in on that also.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, and also just like, even on like a one-on-one pro athlete level, for me, like I love doing it. I trained NHL guys, MLS guys, some NFL guys. But I always it was so, it made me so anxious because I was always worried that like my program could be a bit off. And I was like really concerned that they would tweak something in my care and it might mess up their performance on the field. And it just wasn't my cup of tea. I could never really get too comfortable with it. And then, to your point, it's like, if you're trying to go the route of actually being on a professional team, it's like, it's super hard to get into, super rare, and you make like no money working up your way to get there. And I've also found too that a lot of those teams and players and personalities, they oftentimes they feel like they're doing you a favor, like, oh, you get to train me versus so like you just, I don't know. It was always tough for me.
See, it's funny because that you say that, because, still working with a decent amount of athletes myself, I actually thrived on that. And
Hmm.
I had this weird kind of dichotomy. Like sometimes I'd be, working on somebody, let's say I'm just stretching their calf, and it's like, people would say, "Oh, what's it like to work with these people?" And it's like, sometimes it's just another calf you're stretching, right? And then other times you have the realization, like I'm doing, I'm working on somebody's shoulder, and I'm, working on their shoulder mobility. And it's like, you know what? This arm in my hand is worth tens of millions of
Yeah.
dollars. If I screw this up and pull too hard, I'm on the cover of the New York Post. Like I know, like,
Yep.
and I thrived under that. I
Uh-huh.
like that. I like the fact that, like, and we used to have a thing that we would do with my staff when I had my facility is we would do a little exercise when we had our staff meetings, and I'd say, okay, write down whoever your dream client is. Like if you could train anybody in the world, who would it be? And so, people would write down whoever it was. And if you were into training athletes, they might have a certain athlete. And I said, okay, now, if that person walked in the door right this second, are you actually ready for that? Can you actually step up to the plate and do that? And on every level, like when they walk in, are they going to see that you left your weights all over the place, and they're going to think, oh, this place isn't the place for me? Or are you eating, tuna out of a tub? Or like, are you in a sleeveless shirt? Like, can you even look the part, number one? And then can you actually deliver? Can you actually sit down and within the first 10 minutes, they're like, okay, this guy or girl, they get it. And so I always had that name in my head saying, if this person walks through the door, I'm ready. And so if you're thinking of being at that level, that's kind of a good exercise for you to do, to think, if you can't really be that person, then you're just, it's a pipe dream. It's no different than saying I want to play shortstop for the Yankees. You know what I mean? Like I have nowhere near the ability to do that. So to expect to do that is crazy. So let's go on one more business model here. All right. So pandemic, we brought up a couple different times, that made everybody rush to go and do virtual training and online training. Right. And most of it, I actually, joked about it when we were about a month in. I said, most of it is just people doing burpees in their living room. Like this is garbage. But there is a capability to really do high level virtual training. I mean, I'm into it now. I have an app. I have everything. I can train people around the world. So where do you see that fitting in as a viable business model, even in a hybrid sense? Because like you said, you have, when you're training people for personal training, especially who have some money. My clients this morning just got back from a 2-week bike trip to France, right? So how do you handle having that ability to still work with them when they're not with you, and or incorporate a hybrid model?
Yeah, so I think my answer to that is twofold. One, the virtual model, the virtual setting sort of reinforced, in my opinion, why people loved the personal aspect of personal training so much. It's like it was cool for a minute, right? When we were all doing the virtual sessions during the pandemic and the lockdowns and all that kind of stuff. And it was awesome that we could still keep and be engaged with our clients. But it definitely got to a point for everybody where it was like, man, it's so much better doing this in person. And then when they came back to do it in person, it really clicked with everybody how personal training is not going anywhere. There is in semi-private and group training, there is something to be said about the human connection, being in the same room together, training together, hitting PRs together. That's hard to replicate anywhere else. That being said, with the virtual training and the hybrid model, I think it will be able to take our industry to the next level, in the sense that when my clients go to their summer homes for 3 months, I can still see them 3 days a week. When my client is, traveling on business, I can be in his pocket when he's at the hotel gym. And even on my end, my wife is we're having our second child around Christmas time, so I'm going to take some time off. And I can guarantee you there'll be 3 or 4 hours in a day when I'm at home doing nothing and kids are sleeping. I'll pop on the computer and I'll train a client, even if they're in the gym and I'm at home. So it adds it adds a lot of accessibility, and it can keep us engaged even when we can't be in person, which I think is fantastic for everybody involved.
Where I see it for myself personally is, I kind of put myself where the niche that I want to work with is, if you need a trainer to get you to work out, I'm not your person. right?
Mhm.
If you
Mhm.
need a trainer just to show you how to work out, then I'm your guy, because there's a certain segment of the population that I work with that they don't necessarily aren't seeking out a personal trainer because they're working out anyway and they're doing it. They just don't know what they're doing. And they usually don't figure that out until they get broken. And that's when
Yeah.
they end up coming to see me. And so I say, okay, well, not only are we going to try to fix whatever issue you have, you know, hip, knee, low back, whatever it is, but we got to show you how to work out properly so this doesn't happen again. And I don't need to see you 3 times a week to do that. I'm going to now do an evaluation, do your program. Okay, you're going to do this for a month, and then I'll check back in with you in a month from now. And that's where I think it also has a lot of value, because there are a lot of people who are already exercising. They just need direction. And if we can provide that on a high level, there's a huge market for that also.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So, Mike, as we sort of get towards the end here, bud, let's say, you know, there's a brand new coach and they want to pick your brain, and they wanted to tell you, hey, Mike, what would be the best piece of advice you would give me to make or work towards a successful career in personal training, strength and conditioning?
Oh man. Well, generally speaking, so I was asked to give a talk at Babson to an entrepreneurial class maybe like 2 years ago. And because one of my clients was taking a class there, and I was like, you don't want me to do that. And he was like, how come? I was like, because it'll be 2 minutes long. I'll literally walk on stage and I'll say to everybody, find the best company you can find and be the best number two possible. And you'll you'll be killing it. You'll have so much fun. You'll make a ton of money, and you won't have to work 100 hours a week every week. Yeah, that's kind of generally speaking. The piece of advice. I think, well, going back to like my original comments at the very beginning, you, money aside, you have to figure out if this is what you love doing. You have to figure that out. That is step number one. Do you love helping people? Are you enamored with the health and fitness business? Are you constantly digging into materials and trying to progress your skill set and reading up on the research and staying healthy and fit yourself? Uh, if those things are true, you will be able to get past the 1 or 2 years where you're working shitty hours and clients are dropping sweaty dumbbells on the floor and making you get on your hands and knees and clean it and put it away, and you won't feel resentful because you deeply love what you're doing. And once you get past that hurdle and you get your systems in place, uh, it's that cliche of love what you're doing and you never work a day in your life. It's like kind of true, I think, in this setting. I mean, I really thoroughly love my job. I think we have the best job in the world. I come to work in nice sweatpants and a t-shirt every day, and I chop it up with my friends. It's like I absolutely love it, and I think uh, that would be the number one piece of advice I would give to any coach starting out in this business is, do you actually love this industry? Do you love helping people? If that is the case, you will succeed. You can't not succeed if those two things are true.
Love it. All right, Mike. So what do you got coming up in the next year or so? Any new plans? You going to take over the world or what?
Well, I referenced them earlier, but we just signed on with 2 new equity partners. They're the owners of the other 2 PEX gyms, so they're like official owners in the business now, which is pretty cool. We're looking to open up our 4th location always. So if anyone out there has a town or an open space where they think a PEX would be awesome in their neighborhood, let us know. And we're also working on developing a development program for coaches who have no clients who might be coming fresh out of school, and a mentorship program for coaches who are transitioning from other facilities and want to come over to ours, where they can kind of get up and going faster under the supervision of a coach who has been in our industry for a while.
That's awesome stuff. Well, it's definitely a refreshing approach. Mike and I'm on year 25. Mike's on just about 20, and we've kind of seen it all, but we don't see enough of the good guys like yourself who are doing it the right way. And
Thanks,
so it's really good to see. So, Perry, unless you got any last comments, or is this where it goes off the rail with Chowda and Sam Adams?
No, I think we're good. It's always good to see this guy's face. It's funny. He talks about unclogging drains. And I remember one morning, like he posted something at like 4 a.m. and I was like, posted it back at like 4:40, and I'm like, dude, this is the best drain cleaner you can get. I'm like, go get this. It's like, like I have like a few buddies that like I'll text at like 4 or 5 in the morning, and they're all business owners, and it's just like, hey, you're the only one that's up right now. But no, he's a madman. He'll do it all. But thanks for coming, Mike. It's good to see your face, bud.
I really appreciate you guys having me, honestly.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. And we'll always thank you for listening. And this has been the Principles of Performance podcast. Thank you for listening to the Principles of Performance podcast. If you've enjoyed our content, please like and share on your social media outlets, as well as subscribe and give us a review on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your preferred platform is to listen to. For more information on the Principles of Program Design courses and workshops, visit us at www.principlesofprogramdesign.com and follow us on all the social media channels where we post new content every day. To save 10% on any PPD courses, enter the discount code PRINCIPLESPODCAST10 at checkout. If you have any questions we can answer or suggestions for the show, you can email us at info@principlesofprogramdesign.com or message us on social media. Thank you again for your support.